Well, hello everybody. It's that silly Englishman again. On a Tuesday, which is a bit different. And this evening, well, it is in the UK, day wherever you are, afternoon wherever, whatever. I'm going to have a little look at a bit of a deck that's come back from or came out after Mech Warrior. So it's a bit of a throwback. Does that mean it's a throwback Tuesday? Throwback Thursday sounds better. It's a throwback Thursday stream on a Tuesday. Oh, there's nothing straight and normal about that, is it? Let's go silly. And it's a really unique deck, which is why I kind of like it and I'm kind of interested in it. And it was created by a guy called Donald Lim, and I've got to give this guy a lot of credit because people with minds like that do not exist very often. They are one in a million type people, and I always found that when he created a deck, I wanted to look at it because it was always different and it was always interesting and it always did something that no one else was really expecting. And the other thing I've got to say about Donald Lim, who goes by the moniker of Focht, by the way, Anastasius Focht, Foch, whatever you want to call it. In the UK, we pronounce it with a hard T. It's not me saying rude words. Okay. So he is the only person to play a mechless deck at 3 World Championships and consecutive ones as well. Okay. So anyway, we're not going to look at the mechless deck. That's another day. That's another time. That's another throwback Thursday on a Tuesday, or do you know what? For the hell of it, I'll do it on a Wednesday or something or other, just to confuse everybody and be silly. But today we're going to look at the 16 card wonder. And yes, that is a deck that only has 16 cards in it. And it survives and it can win. And I know what everybody's thinking at this point. They're thinking, WTF. I said I wasn't going to say it, didn't I? Okay. So we'll have a look at the deck and then I'll show you how it works and also how it fails. And this is a bit of fun. I would say don't play this competitively. Play this with your mate on a Sunday afternoon where you've got a pizza and there's a couple of bottles of beer and you want a bit of fun and a bit of a laugh. Do not take this deck seriously, and I'll explain why. So, 16 card deck, 16 card wonder. Here are the 16 cards. There are two uniques. Uncle Chandy, Chandrasekhar Kurita. Theodore, good old Teddy. 1 severed supply lines. 2 copies of Contract with Northwind Highlanders. 2 salvage strike crews. 2 tracking system failures. 2 think tanks. 3 field construction sites and 2 sentinels, and that's it. And this deck, in the right circumstances, will beat your bottom or kick your ass, as the Americans would say. And at the time, and remember, this is just at the end of Mech Warrior, so no Arsenal cards, no Commander's Edition, no Crusades. Okay, so what you've got to think about is the meta, which is very assembly and tactics, inner sphere, pilot or swarm, occasionally the odd Sandhurst deck, or clan, probably fast, probably wolf, dash variants. Okay, there were big mech decks and you could play with certain things, but those were the general big archetypes. And what you'll notice is it's A&T for inner sphere and assembly, munitions and tactics for clan. So very few people were playing logistics, and this deck punishes people for not playing logistics and arguably not playing logistics in a number of cards. You know, not just a couple of logistics. We're talking 8 plus here. Okay. So the other thing to notice with this deck is that there's no basic resource in it. And this is really smart, and this is why Donald Lim, Focht, whatever, gets another star, is there is no basic resource in this deck, which means if you don't get the right hand you want, you've got an automatic mulligan. You don't even need to check for it because there are none there. Okay. And at the time, he says that this deck is arguably one where there's a little bit of slippage by the Wizards of the Coast design team or test team, because they should have spotted this. Maybe. It is a turn 2 lock, and this is arguably used in the Star League Hasty Alliance deck as well. But I thought it would be good to explain it in its original format, and also show you how it works. So the idea is based around Theodore Kurita, or Teddy Kurita, and he basically says, counts as Theodore when in play. Making a deployment costs each opponent an additional nothing, plus 2 logistics. Okay, so every deployment, if you haven't got logistics in play, you've got to pay 2 resources for it. And that can really slow people up. And if you haven't got access to logistics, you're in a lot of trouble. The only ways round it in subsequent eras were A, play logistics naturally, B, when the card was put on the table, have a war funds in your on the table that you could scrap to go and get a logistics, or a think tank, or have a think tank on the table. So there's 3 basic ways around it, and that was it. So the idea is to drop Teddy early to stop your opponent putting any more cards out. He can draw, he can have the biggest hand he wants, but he can't put any of them on the table unless he can play that logistics buyout. And we'll see how that works. It doesn't always work. Okay. After that, your amazing 0-cost Sentinel is going to deal all the damage. So, yeah, you're going to plink them together at a rate of 1 per turn. Note that the Sentinel is medium. We'll see how that works in a minute, because any mech that your opponent will put on the table gets a tracking system failure put on it. And tracking system failure basically says it does -2 attack, and it's slow, and it cannot block unless it's guarding. So if it's slow, our Sentinel will keep on going. And then you'll say, oh yes, but he can block, so he'll put it on the stockpile. And if it's got 1 armor, our Sentinel will just bounce 1 damage off it. Yep, that's great. But we have the wonderful contract with Northwind Highlanders, which gives it 2 attack and 3 armor, and all of a sudden it can start to kill things. Okay. So the other questions you're going to ask are, how do the other cards fit in? So Salvage Crew is there if one of the cards that you require for the lock is scrapped early on. And Uncle Chandy, Chandrasekhara Kurita, is there to allow you to restock an additional card each turn. So I have 5 cards in my hand, I draw 2, I restock 2. My stockpile remains constant. And as my opponent won't be dealing any damage to it because our tracking system failed his unit, then I'm away. I'm in a static position and I can plink my opponent to death. Okay, so let's have a look at how this actually manifests itself in in-game terms. Okay, so over in the game window over here, I've got me. And for those of you that don't know, there is a test dummy, and the test dummies are quite good because you can load decks to them. And this is a great way of playing against yourself, which I wouldn't advise, not in polite company anyway. But you can test your deck against other things just playing through the hands, and this is normally quite a good way. I find I often pull decks in here and just draw and play out 4 or 5 draws and put cards on the table to just see how my deck develops, and it's just a rudimentary test, but it does work quite well. So here I am. I will draw 5 cards, and I don't like any of those. So I will, because it's a mulligan, I will put them all back in the stockpile. I will shuffle them, and I will go back and draw them again. And unfortunately, I haven't got what I want, but still. So this is how the game generally goes. So I draw a card, I play a field construction site. Okay, so that's my turn. My opponent, the test dummy over here, and I'll just switch the decks to the test dummy, and I'll just draw the 2 cards. Oops, sorry. I will put these 2 cards in the hand. It's easier, and reveal them. Oh, what's going on here? Can I flip them? I thought I could turn them over. Yeah, here we go. So, turn over. Right. So my opponent plays an assembly, taps it for 1, and out comes my mongoose. Okay, so I can flick back to me, draw a card, draw a card. Now I'm just going to fudge this for the moment. Let's just view the stockpile, reveal to all. Where is he? Where is Theo? Oh, here's Theo. I've got him. So I put my think tank down. I put Theo down. I tap my think tank for once. For 1, I tap my field construction for 2. I scrap my field construction for 2 more, giving me 4 on Theo. And as he's got a politics buyout, I'll scrap my think tank for politics. And he is now in play. So at this point, he can't deploy anything else because he hasn't got logistics on the board. It's going to cost him 2 logistics, and he's only got 1 resource, and you can't even build that up because it's the deployment costs 2L. I mean, if it was activation, which arguably might be where they screwed up, then that would work. You could start and build a card up, but you can't. So what's probably going to happen, he hasn't got a great deal of stuff, so he'll probably tap with a mongoose, and I'll scrap a card and scrap a card. And I've scrapped a sentinel and a salvage crew. Okay, so I have tactics, think tank in play for politics, which means the next card, if I draw and draw, actually I'm gonna fudge it. I'm gonna put the tracking system failure in my hand, which is what we wanted. I'll drop the salvage crew into the stockpile, and I will tracking system failure the mongoose. So this is slow, and it does no damage as there is -2 attack on it. Okay, tracking system is 1, so I probably need a think tank and tap it to pay for the tracking system. My bad play there, but you get the idea. Turn 2, think tank or even a field construction site would work. Tap for 1, tracking system fail the mongoose. Okay, so he's now in real doo-doo. He can't put another card down because of the logistics buyout, and his mongoose is slow, does no damage, and has to guard if it's going to block anything. So at this point, then what I need to do is put down Uncle Chandy next turn, tap Uncle Chandy, and actually I had a tracking system failure in my hand. Restock and put the sentinel down. Oh, I forgot to draw as well. I probably did that in the wrong order, and I probably fudged it in order to get things out. But still, you get the idea. So Uncle Chandy comes down, and I can scrap my think tank for logistics, which means I can restock a card. And Uncle Chandy allows me to restock a card as well. And my sentinel is now out. Okay. If he guards with the mongoose, then I'm not going to worry too much, because next turn I can restock 2 cards, draw 2 cards, and I now have not a great deal in play, but I will restock 2 cards and draw 2 cards. Am I out of resources? Alright, I've got to play a few hands in order to get the field construction into my hand. But I'll just restock something in order to get it. So the idea here is he can't do anything, and I've got my Sentinel. So the next thing I want is a resource, which I can tap for 1, and I can put my contract with Northwind Highlanders out. And then I can attack with my Sentinel. Okay. I've got politics in play, and this means I can pay 1 each turn to keep Northwind Highlanders on. So I've tapped that for my Northwind Highlanders. If he blocks with a Mongoose, I tap Northwind Highlanders. I now do 3 damage. So the Mongoose takes 1, 2. Okay. And then it's over to him. So he will untap his assembly, and he will repair his Mongoose, and that's all he can do. I will restock a card, and I will restock a card, or put them in the stockpile, and I will draw a card and draw a card, and then I can untap everything. Let me untap. I'll just untap them this way, man. Okay, and we're in this position. Now, if I really want, I can play Severed Supply Lines, which basically, when we look at this, Severed Supply Lines, when it's revealed, choose an opponent and an asset. That opponent loses that asset until he or she deploys a resource card providing it. So I put that down and nominate Assembly. So he can no longer repair his Mongoose. I appreciate that it will take me 2 or 3 turns to get over the Mongoose. He's repairing 1 each time and I'm dealing 3, so that's a net +1, but it'll just make the game quicker slightly. So the Mongoose can't be repaired. I will attack with the Sentinel. He blocks with the Mongoose. I go +2 attack. It now takes another 2, which means it will die, and then I can just rinse and repeat, restock 2 cards, and keep attacking for 1, and with the contract of Northwind Highlanders, +2 each time, dealing 3 damage, and it's a long, slow, painful death. Because of this lock and this ability to restock 2 cards each time. And that's the 16-card wonder. It works really well. Each time you draw 2, restock 2, attack for 2 or 3, etc, etc, etc. And it works a treat. Okay. Or at least it did in that respect. Does it work these days? No. The reason it doesn't work so much these days is that people play a lot more logistics. With war funds being able to draw cards, then the assembly could go into a war funds. But the other thing is that it relies on them playing an assembly and a Mongoose. Okay. If they play an assembly and a war funds, or an assembly and a tactics, it doesn't work because it's +2L. So I can go assembly, tactics, pay off the 2, I can make a deployment. Okay. Gets a bit awkward because if it's a mech, it's going to get killed by the Sentinel. But I can go assembly, tactics to deploy another resource card and then slowly build things up that way. I'm taking a few hits in between, but as soon as I get my resource base going and I get 2 or 3 or 4 down, and I've got a unit out, then the game is over for me to win. Okay, you're literally on the edge, taking 2, drawing 2 each time, and from that point of view, you can survive. And the other thing to note on the restock is that Uncle Chandy restocks during your deploy phase, and then logistics restocks at the end of your turn. So you're always in credit there. You never get to the stage where you, and I think I got there because I fudged up or pulled the wrong cards, or it didn't quite work in order as I wanted it to. But you always have 1 in and you restock 2, leaving you 3 cards all the time. So the only way you can screw it up is actually if you forget to restock at the end. So it doesn't work so much these days. Resources more prevalent, logistics more prevalent. The advent of things like war funds, which again I know it got nerfed and within the community, saying that it's got to pull a card that provides an asset, which means it couldn't pull Think Tank, which I think is an issue, because where this deck played in a tournament, it won literally every first game. Every first game it played against, it got its lock and it won. And the only way that people beat it was to change the resource mix or work out what they needed to do and war funds for a Think Tank, or played the Think Tank early, or played 2 resources. So I think the tweak on war funds, to say you can't pull something like a Think Tank, and I understand that it was there to not pull Solaris or Black Market and whatever else. I'm not convinced. I think it was fine as it was, and it would circumvent this a little more. When you look at the Star League deck that Gustav ran, any clan deck, or if he didn't think they were playing logistics, he would Hasty Alliance Task Force Serpent for Teddy every time, because he knew that if they haven't got logistics down, he could put that on the table and they were in a lot of trouble. And if it didn't lock them out completely, it really slowed them up whilst he built up his forces. So yeah, interesting. I'm not sure you're going to Hasty Alliance for it without a Star League deck, to be honest, these days. You might be able to do it and it might be a bit of fun. I would definitely not advise playing this in a competitive environment, but I would definitely say it's a work of art. It's a very, very wonderfully well thought out deck. Every card has a function. There is no wastage. The lack of a specific resource means that you can mulligan, which gives you 2 chances of pulling what you want. And on a 16 cards, then you're drawing the right amounts. There's three field construction, 2 think tanks. The numbers all work nicely. The probabilities work out. It's as good as you can get when it comes to design. So there's my little throwback Tuesday, a little snippet for you. Short stream tonight. There is a big stream coming on Saturday. I have 2 guests. They are finalists, and we're going to look through some of the latest FAQ. And I'm not going to say any more than that. Like me, I'm going to hopefully have a card for them, and we're going to do a multi-stream, which is pretty damn scary for me because I've never done it before. I think I've got OBS set up right. I'm going to have to test it on the day. I think we're due to start about 3:30, 4 o'clock UK time, and I've got a pretty busy morning, so it's going to be a pretty hectic day. And what you think is going to be half an hour stream invariably is going to end up to be 2 hours. And I normally cook the tea in our house, so I'm going to probably get it in my ear for tea being late as well, based on that. But it should be fun, it should be good, and it should be quite interesting putting a number of people in the same room as me, because we all have slightly different opinions, but I think we all end up with a similar consensus. So anyway, look out for that. I'm going to put it in the schedule so people know it's coming. And after that, I'm going to probably move on and do a little bit of draft in order to support the tournament I'm going to run, which I think is the 5th of January, if I remember rightly. It's a Christmas, New Year's tournament. It's free. It's sealed deck, which evens a lot of the playing field out. So there's no superpower cards. It's what's in your deck and what you make of it, and just basically a bit of fun. And I thought, with Christmas being around and everyone buying presents for the kids and not having any money, I thought if I ran a free one, then people would appreciate that and come along and play and think, oh, it's not going to cost me anything, so that'll be good. So I'm going to do some stuff to support that. Probably outline what sealed is, the various formats of it, and then do some demonstrations about how to create things, and some of the pitfalls and reasons for it, because when you randomly create a deck, it's dead easy to modify cards, whether it's intentionally or not intentionally. So the way around it is to actually create the deck in the presence of Judge. That'll be me. Which is a 2-minute job, and then after that create your deck. But that's another time. So anyway, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Hopefully you'll find that the 16 card wonder is a fun piece of deck building, which I definitely say it is, and an interesting thing to look at. Anyway, I'm done. Stick a fork in me. Look after yourselves. It's a big world out there, and I'll see you another day for another stream with some BattleTech involved somewhere along the lines. Take care, everybody.